Welcome to Charlestown. Charlestown, make some noise. Thank you so much for your hospitality. My name is Chris Cook. I'm the Chief of Environment, Energy, and Open Space for the City of Boston. Very, very grateful to be here. It's hard to imagine a better place to have a preservation announcement than the birthplace of America, Charlestown, Massachusetts. None of the other historical sites can get mad at me about saying that. Very, very happy to be here. Obviously happy to be here in Historic Memorial Hall, one of Charlestown's oldest buildings and one of Boston's oldest neighborhoods. A huge thank you and round of applause for the Friends of Memorial Hall. As well as the Abraham Lincoln Post 11 and the Grand Army of the Republic for hosting us today. I have to say that it's just daunting saying the Grand Army of the Republic from a podium. That's very exciting to say. We're here to celebrate, though, the impact of the Community Preservation Act is having on our city's historic gems, and especially in the preservation community. And you'll hear from him very soon, but the mayor always said one of the beauties of the Community Preservation Act was not just about open space and about housing, but what it could do for the preservation community who so dearly needs these funds and so clearly defines the nature of our city. So we're very, very grateful. In just the first year, $11 million is being spent on 35 projects to save, preserve, and restore our historic resources. Boston, give yourselves another round of applause. It's difficult to overstate the importance of leadership when it comes to the Community Preservation Act and the leadership demonstrated from the mayor and so many other elected officials. This is your money, and the idea of taking this money and giving it to something that's a shared resource for us and a shared resource that so defines our communities and city. It was something that required strong leadership. It required strong commitment. And we couldn't have a stronger advocate for these funds and for this community than the Mayor of Boston. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Mayor of Boston, Martin J. Walsh.
Thank you, Chris. And I want to thank my friends that are here with me today that I brought. We marched from Beacon Hill to Charlestown. We're going to do that fight all over again. It's going to be different. I want to just take a minute to, first of all, thank all of you for being here today. Everyone who represents an organization, all of you represent historic preservation, historical parts of our city. So thank you for that. I want to thank Chris and his team. I want to thank Christine Poff and her team, Felicia, the CPA, the members of the CPA, the City Council for their great work as well on this. Historic preservationists from all across the city are here today. Thank you, Boston Preservation Alliance. Thank you to Friends of Memorial Hall, Charlestown Preservation Society, Abraham Lincoln Post. Thank you for having us. Thank you, everyone here. I could literally go up and down and thank everyone and introduce everyone. I do have to introduce one person that's a former elected official, former Senate President Bill Bulger's with us. Thank you, Senate President Bulger. More importantly, his wife Mary's with us. Thank you, Mary. To all the residents of Charlestown as well, thank you. It's exciting to be here today. I'm so thankful to be here. We are very proud of our city's history. Chris talked about it when we were fighting for the CPA on the ballot. I would often go around and talk about, and I'm not taking anything away from housing in open space, but in the city budget in the last 5 years since I've been mayor, we have made every year a historic investment in open space and parks and making sure we continue that. And we've done it year after year after year. We're building everything that's green. We're building it. 5 years ago, we weren't. Every neighborhood wasn't a 10-minute walk from a park. Today we are. We're the first city on the East Coast, second city in America to accomplish that. In housing, obviously, we know that there are shortages in housing. Without having a federal housing partner, we've raised the inclusionary development money. We've been able to dedicate money towards the budget. We've been working on a whole bunch of different with nonprofits and building affordable housing and set a plan. And the one area that, quite honestly, didn't have a lot of financial support on the public side was historic preservation. And I felt that this ballot question that we were pushed forth a few years ago was so important. And one of it was because I talked to many of you. about preserving what you have, and how do you make investments, and everyone came back to me the same way. It's philanthropic, and you're hoping to get somebody that cares deeply about preservation, and you're hoping that somebody will write that check, and it's clumping checks together, and not that that still doesn't happen today, but having the CPA today, you know there's money coming, and you know there's opportunities there, and that's what I thought was one of the most valued, important parts of passing this piece of legislation, to make sure we have it, and I want to thank you for your support. Right here in this vibrant community in Charlestown, we have a public library branch, a boys club, a church, and many more. We have stores and hubways and tea station, but we also have historical buildings like Memorial Hall, and it's important for us to make sure that we continue to support those. Preserving history is not shutting it away somewhere. It's not about a picture on a wall, this used to be here. It's about making sure, providing the resources to a neighborhood, to make sure that with meeting space and programs that we serve the folks that need them, the veterans and the immigrants and the young people of all kinds, because those are our story. That's our story of our city. I often talk about it, and I talk about it almost every day when I talk about Boston, the makeup of Boston today. About 700,000 people. 28% of the people who live in our city were born in another country. They're immigrants. 48% of the people who live in our city are first generation like I am. 50% of the people who live in our city are people of color. 52% of the households in our city are led by women. When you think about the diversity of our city, and if we go back in time, that number of 28% immigrants probably goes a little higher at certain periods of time, but that's who built us, and it's important for us to preserve the history of our city. Because those immigrants that came to the shores from different places, if you go to their cities across Europe, particularly in Europe, they preserve their historic places. And they make investments, and they're committed to it. And it's not just once in a while, it's all the time. So that is so important for us, because what we're doing with investing in historical preservation, we're investing in the heart of our community in many ways. I grew up in Dorchester. We have the Dorchester Historical Society. We have the Blake House that for years I walked by that we hung at the Blakey. And we used to play baseball in the Blake House, and they used to get mad at us because we were hitting baseball. Sometimes we'd hit the window, and we're like, you don't know what you're doing here, and we didn't at the time. But we have them there. And then we celebrated Dorchester, where I grew up in Everett Square. Years ago, an artist came and said, well, I want to put a big display here of a pear. And, you know, I was the head of a civic association at the time, and I'm kind of like working with the pear. I'm like, what's the significance? Because it was all orchards where I grew up. And you look at the history of that and understanding that historical perspective of the people that came before us. We also, the people in this neighborhood, the generation who fought for the American Revolution built this hall we're in today, gave us our country right here in Boston. The generation who fought for freedom in the Civil War cherished this place and cherished this community. And it's important for us to understand that. I'm proud to be a mayor still cherishing and preserving legacy. It's something that we have to continue to do. I'm proud to be a mayor of a city that we're doing everything we can to live up to the founding ideals that our country was built on. A city of freedom and opportunity for all. I'm proud of that, and that's who we are as a city. This is what historic preservation, in my opinion, and part of it is all about. This is about what Community Preservation Act is all about. When you look at the components, as I mentioned earlier, affordable housing, we've made significant investments. On all the other investments we've made in the housing, the CPA has helped us with even additional investments in affordable housing. When I talk about the open space and the Parks and Recreation, we're also talking about DCR and our special places there, about making more investments in our open space. And clearly, historic preservation. And some people have said, why those three issues? How come those are the three that the legislature decided? What we're talking about, they connect the past, the present, and the future. All of those different areas that the investments are being made in. And that's something, thank you, Christine. That's a one-woman ovation right there. I appreciate that. Chris talked about it, and I don't have the numbers for the housing and the open space, and Chris talked about $11 million in historic preservation. And every one of those projects will not only see history restored, but we'll see our community strengthened, because many of the historical places in our neighborhoods are the gathering points for our communities as well. It's where we hold our civic associations. It's where we do our events with our young people. It's where our older people come and congregate and talk. Those are what's so important for us all. We're working right now with the state to get the CPA matching funds to be where they need to be. When this project was created, it was originally created as a dollar for dollar match. And over time it changed, and for different reasons it changed. We're not blaming anybody. But not right now, more than 170 cities and towns depend on CPA funds for these three important areas. It would be important for us that we continue to change this formula, and we want to adjust the surcharges on fees for recording deeds to increase the state CPA match. It's so important that we find other alternative modes of money to get into that account so we can get that match up. We need to get that match up. We need to continue to work together to get that match up. When residents voted for CPA, they did it with the promise of a substantial match from the state. And we said to them, you know, our goal is a dollar for dollar match, and we're going to continue to fight for that. But we need to make sure we get a substantial match there. Right now, the match is about 11%, meaning that the CPA bill that people of Boston voted for, that you voted for, that we all voted for, is no longer the same bill that we advocated for back several years ago. We want to make sure that we bring the CPA more in line with what voters agreed to. And if you look at this project in this community, you'll agree it's worth the investment. So I just ask you, I know that the legislature, I want to thank the legislature for taking some action in the budget this year, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to move forward and get more money in here. This is probably some of the best spent money you can possibly spend. When I think about being the mayor, or when I was a state legislator before that, I think about the areas that we're investing in. Housing is a right that we should make sure that all people, regardless of income, should be able to have a roof over their head, a safe roof over their head. And we need to continue to make investments there. Open space, used by everybody, used by toddlers and used by seniors and everyone in between, whether it's a passive park sitting there and just having a relaxing time or getting exercise. In historic preservation, as I mentioned earlier, I can't stress enough, we can't forget who we are, where we came from. And we're a young country, but we have a lot of beautiful places that need a lot of investment. So I just want to say thank you to all of you for being here today. Many of you in this room have done this work a lot longer than I have. I want to thank you for this, and I want you to know that the City of Boston, the people that work with me every single day, we are committed 1,000% to stand with you, to continue to fight, to make sure we get as much money as we can into the CPA so we can continue to make strong investments in the history of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks again for your leadership on CPA. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce to you, for those who are in Charlestown, probably someone who doesn't need much introduction, but for everyone else who made the drive today, Joseph Savante, the president of Abraham Lincoln Post 11 and the Grand Army of the Republic.
Love the way you say that. Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Mayor, it's a pleasure to have you in Charlestown. We love to see you in town. Thank you for coming today. Well, come stay for the rest of the week if you like. Ms. Jacques and your committee, thank you so much for all the help you've given us. The CPA committee has just been phenomenal. City council members, I don't know who's here today, if anybody came, but I can't thank anyone enough. This has been our foster child. The building has been wallowing in disrepair, and we finally managed to stabilize it, and now, thanks to Mayor Walsh and the CPA money, we're going to bring this jewel back to what it looked like in 1888. The building was built in 1791 by Samuel Dexter, the Secretary of War and the Secretary of the Treasury under President John Adams. It changed hands a number of times until 1888, when the veterans of the Civil War, the Grand Army of the Republic, bought the building. And in an amazing architectural feat, they raised the entire roof 20 feet, took out the living quarters on the second floor, put a spring-loaded dance floor in, and created the Abraham Lincoln Post 11. And it's been serving the veterans of Charlestown since. I have the honor of being the president of the Abraham Lincoln Post, but I'm standing on the shoulders of many people who did a lot more than I did. And we're just overjoyed that we're going to be able to bring this building back. And once again, thank you, Mayor Walsh. We appreciate it. Thank you, Felicia. And thank you all for coming today.
Thank you very much, Joe, and thank you for your hospitality. I also want to recognize a few of our colleagues from City Hall. Interim Veterans Commissioner Robert Santiago is here with us, as well as my colleagues from the Environment Department, including the Commissioner, Carl Spector. Thank you, Carl, for joining us. And also we have the Boston Landmarks Commission Chair Lynn Smilage here with us as well. Lynn is here as well. Just very briefly, as the mayor said, there are people who have been engaged in this work for a very long time, and our next speaker is one of those people, especially the organization that she represents, the Boston Preservation Alliance. You know, so often this work requires late nights. It requires nights hunched over your laptop, writing comment letters while your little ones are asking to be put to bed or to watch the next TV show. And it really requires dedication. There's nobody who's more dedicated in the city of Boston to historic preservation than the Boston Preservation Alliance. And I see the Executive Director, Greg Kaler, is here as well. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker, Allison Frazee, the Assistant Director of the BPA. Thank you.
Everybody, good afternoon, friends and fellow preservationists. It's so great to see so many familiar faces and new faces, future friends. As an advocate for the Community Preservation Act, co-chair of Yes for Better Boston Coalition, and one of the many supporters who stood outside the polls in 2016 asking residents to vote yes on question 5, I am thrilled to be here celebrating the first year of CPA funds for historic preservation. I want to thank Mayor Walsh for his support. CPA could not have passed without your outspoken commitment and leadership in the citywide campaign. I want to thank the CPC, Christine Poff, and the rest of the staff of the Community Preservation Office who have worked so hard to get this thing off the ground. And I want to thank all of you, the stewards and true champions of our historic city, who are doing the work to protect the places that tell our stories and make each neighborhood unique. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We are here today to celebrate historic preservation, but the term historic preservation is a bit of a misnomer. Though many of the places we seek to protect, like Memorial Hall, have a direct link to our founding fathers and are historic in a traditional sense, most of what advocates like the Boston Preservation Alliance, our local historical societies, main streets, and neighborhood associations are fighting every day to protect have nothing to do with anyone or anything famous. They're regular, everyday buildings that tell the stories of regular, everyday Bostonians like you and me. They've been the homes and schools and bathhouses and libraries of Boston residents for generations, and they can serve generations to come if they're given that chance. Like Memorial Hall, they are well used and well loved by the residents of this city. Through investment, policy, and collective will, we can keep the bricks, stones, and wood forged by the hands of true craftsmen of the past out of landfills. We can maintain the walkable, human-scaled streetscapes that define our neighborhoods, give us a sense of place and identity, and draw millions of visitors, residents, and businesses to our city. We can tell the stories of all the residents who have made Boston the city that it is. Not just the revolutionaries, but the abolitionists, the suffragettes, the freedom fighters. We must be intentional about the places we choose to preserve, because we are choosing whose stories get to live on in the tangible memory of our built environment. And we must remember that historic preservation doesn't mean freezing a building in time. It means capturing moments in time to be preserved for the benefit of future generations. The Community Preservation Act makes this work possible. As the first and only major funding source for historic preservation in the city, we are thrilled to see money going in the door of transformational projects like Memorial Hall. The Alliance will continue to work with the Mayor, Christine, the CPC, and future applicants to make sure we're funding the best historic preservation projects possible, the ones that will have the greatest impact in our communities and tell our stories. Thank you to all those who make this work happen, and to everyone for being here today on such a soggy day. I'll leave you with my favorite quote by John Sawhill. In the end, our society will be defined not only by what we create, but by what we refuse to destroy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. And again, thank you for everything the Boston Preservation Alliance does for our city. If it was up to me, all of this money would be mismanaged and I would spend it all on my pet project. But the good thing is we have fantastic financial stewards in the city of Boston, and we're led by an extraordinary leader, the Chief Financial Officer for the city of Boston, Emma Handy. If you could give her a round of applause. And because Emma's in charge of the money and not me, it gets spent in a very well thought out way. And also because of the work of Christine Poff and the folks at the Community Preservation Office. But then, just to make sure that it's really getting spent wisely, there's countless hours put in by the Community Preservation Committee themselves. And it really is it's a yeoman's job. There's a lot of applications. The applications are very dense, and every single project is worth funding, not just the ones that I like. And so they have to spend a lot of time going through that and make sure that they're worthy of investment and that the matching funds could possibly be there, and how is the project going to get executed. And it requires an enormous amount of work, and countless hours are put into it. And I've been so impressed with the Community Preservation Committee and how thoughtful they've been every step of the way, asking clarifying questions and making sure that everyone's getting a fair shot in the city. And that's been led by their chair, our next speaker, Felicia Jacques. Thank you, Felicia.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so exciting to be here celebrating the work of our mayor, our Community Preservation Committee, the Boston Landmarks Commission, and most importantly, all of you, the tireless stewards of the city's historic resources. Together, we are preserving Boston's history. How apt that we are here, that we are gathered at Memorial Hall, one of the city's oldest buildings. I took the tour with Joe, and when he told me that a portion of this building dates all the way back to President John Adams, first John Adams, it was pretty impressive. This building is in dire need of restoration. Can you imagine, a year from now, a beautifully restored facade returning Memorial Hall to its glory days from the 1700s and 1800s? Let's make a date. I hope that you will all come back next Earth Day 2020, to see the transformation. How about that? This fall, the Community Preservation Committee received nearly 90 applications for funding to preserve historic buildings, build and support affordable housing, and renovate and create new parks and playgrounds. As the mayor said, our committee takes its task very seriously to recommend the best and most needed projects to the mayor and to the city council for funding. We read every application amounting to hundreds of pages and seek assistance from city departments and historic preservationists to select the most significant and needed projects. As chair of the Community Preservation Committee, I am thrilled to share that our recommendations included more than $11 million this year, as Chris mentioned, for historic preservation projects. Gracious old mansions like Memorial Hall and Abbotsford in Roxbury, and the Harrison Gray Otis House in the West End will be saved and restored. CPA funds will preserve and transform the reuse of the Charles River Speedway campus in Brighton and the old Comfort Station in Upham's Corner. Community preservation means saving our neighborhood gems, celebrating our history, and maintaining our historic streetscapes. I want to thank Mayor Walsh and Chief Chris Cook for your support. You have embraced our community's work, encouraged transparency, and given us your confidence. I see that we have several members of CPC in our audience this morning. I see Kate Walsh, if she will recognize herself here. Kate Bennett, I'm sorry. I thought I saw our newest commissioner, Michael Parker, and countless members who have, and Carol Downs. I don't see Carol, but there she is. She's back there. So our committee members, as I said, they read every application, hundreds of pages, and we are so invested in these applications and have been thrilled to be able to recommend funding. We have embraced, the community has embraced our committee's work, encouraged transparency, and given us your confidence. Mayor Walsh, from the beginning of the campaign to pass CPA, your leadership has helped Boston voters recognize the importance of this new fund, especially for historic preservation. You have encouraged a process that truly engages residents and neighbors, and through the committee, gives them a seat at the table. Lastly, a huge thank you to all of you sitting in the audience who voted for the Community Preservation Act, may be contributing to it, have identified needs in your neighborhood, and are helping to make Boston a happier place and better place for everyone. Look forward to the next round that's coming up in the fall. Thank you so much.
It was great. Felicia only had slight exhaustion when she said, "I'm looking forward to the next round." It's an enormous opportunity. We're very grateful to the committee for everything it does. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been joined by your district councilor and a huge CPA advocate, Lydia Edwards. Counselor, if you don't mind joining us up here, because we're now heading to a really exciting time in this incredibly small room where I'm gonna read off the recipients of CPA funds, and you're gonna come up and join us so we can all take a group photo. So feel free to hold your applause or to not hold your applause or do whatever you want, because I think this is going to be fairly chaotic. All right. So the first one in alphabetical order, so this is not in order of importance, it's in alphabetical order, is Abbotsford. And come up and join us when you hear your name lift off. Arlington Street Church. The Boston Parks Department. Whoever wants to represent them. Charles River Speedway. Charles Street AME Church, the Chinatown Immigrant Heritage Center, the Church of the Covenant, the Clap and Clap Houses, Coppin Square Park, Cops Hill Burying Ground, Dr. Marie Zakharowska's Dimmick Building Center, Elliott Church, Emmanuel Church, Evergreen Cemetery. There'll be no one left in the chairs when we're done. Faneuil Hall Artifacts, First Baptist Church, First Church Roxbury, former Josiah Quincy School, Haley House, Harrison Gray Otis House, Hyde Park Seventh-day Adventist Church, Memorial Hall, Nantucket Lightship, Old State House, Old West Church, Olmsted Park Woodlands, Pierce Building, Roxbury Presbyterian, St. Augustine Cemetery, St. James African Orthodox Church, St. Luke's Chapel, Sala Hall, Schooner Roseway, Sociedad Latina, South End House, Union United Church, Upham's Corner Comfort Station, Vilna Shul, and the Westland Gates Back Bay Fens. Maria, come on up. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what the face of preservation in Boston looks like. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us here. We'll be around. Feel free to. We're also joined by Sheila Dillon, our Director of Housing for the City of Boston, our Chief. Have a great day in Charlestown. Make sure you get your certificates from Christine.